If you're working to achieve that concert pianist sound, stay tuned because today I'm going to teach you 6 pedal techniques that you need to know to sound more polished. By the end of this video, you will understand what it means to use full pedal, half pedal, quarter pedal, color pedal, flutter pedal, and finger pedal. Hi, I'm Professor Emerita Lenora Brown from the University of Utah piano faculty. The most important thing to remember about good pedaling is that it requires good listening. So in this video, listen carefully as I demonstrate the different types of pedaling. Before we dive into the techniques, let's talk quickly about the damper pedal. The damper pedal or sustaining pedal is to the right of the other pedals and is used more often than the other pedals. It raises all of the dampers off the strings so that they keep vibrating after the player releases the key. Legendary pianist Artur Rubinstein called this pedal the soul of the piano. It's important to remember that the damper pedal isn't used exactly the same way for every piece you play. Now let's talk about full pedals. In the Mozart Fantasy in D minor, we have long flowing lines. It's very appropriate to use full long pedals here to help with the sonority and the sustaining of the notes. To show you an example of quarter pedals. On measures 12 through 15, there's a need to play just very short pedals to help the notes not sound dry and staccato, and yet have a slight separation between. First, I'm going to play for you this passage without pedal and let you hear how dry it sounds. Now listen to it again with pedal. These are just very short quarter pedals that I'm using. Just a slight amount of pedal makes all the difference in the world in the beauty of the tone. Now let's talk about half pedaling. In the Mozart Sonata K331, there's a different problem. In this piece, we want to make sure that the melody and the accompaniment sound legato, and yet you have to be so careful not to over pedal when doing that. Let me show you how it sounds without pedal first. Now listen as I use half pedals for this passage. Now this is still a light pedal touch. It's by no means a full pedal, yet it gives just enough length to make the notes sound beautiful. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about color pedaling. In this same sonata, K331, I'm going to play for you Variation 1. And what I'm going to do is use just a little pedal for my chords in the left hand. When I do that, it gives a much more beautiful tone to those chords. It's likened to a vibrato on a stringed instrument, and it enhances the tone. talk about flutter pedal. In the same sonata, I'm going to play Variation 3 for you. First, I'm going to play it without pedal. Now listen to how much different it sounds when I use just very short, quick flutter pedals. Now, going on, listen to the octaves and how they sound in this next passage without pedal. Now I'll play that same passage with flutter pedal, and we'll be able to play it more like we know Mozart wanted it to sound, which imitates the way it sounds with the single notes at the beginning of the variation. Finger pedaling can be used as a substitute for the damper pedal in music sometimes. It was often used in the Baroque period and definitely in the classical period for pieces that Mozart would compose that had the Alberti bass. In the Prelude and Fugue in E minor by Johann Sebastian Bach, we see an opportunity to use finger pedaling, and it really creates a much more beautiful and legato sound. How this is achieved is by playing the notes overlapped like this. That gives a very legato sound on the piano. In the Mozart Sonata K545 in C major, we have the Alberti bass. Listen to how I sound when I play the notes just as they are written. Now, if I finger pedal in the left hand, I'm going to hold the bottom note with my fifth finger like this. And that's going to give a much more rich and beautiful sound. Many pieces require a combination of these pedal techniques that I have talked about today. In the first two measures of this piece, we can use one pedal for each measure, like this. Down, down. Now on the third measure, you want to make sure not to use a full pedal because there's a rest in the right hand. Down, up, down, down. Pedal, up, down, down. In the next part, we have some chromatic notes, eighth notes. You want to make sure when you have chromatic notes in any piece that you're changing your pedal often for them. So how I would do that, I could use a full pedal here, then I would change it for this note, then I would go pedal, 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 off, pedal, 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 off, pedal, pedal. Now you know a little about some important pedal techniques, but every aspiring pianist needs to have in-depth lessons on how to pedal specific pieces. Be sure to watch my next video where I'm going to talk about pedaling in the Revolutionary Etude by Chopin. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about pedaling. Thanks for being here today.